Hi, Rich Hoffman here. So I was having a nice little lunch at the Supreme Court. They have a little cafeteria down there, and I was eating some food. I had a bunch of books out. I was having a good time doing a little research. I'd been at the Supreme Court all day that day, and so it was a nice place to go and refresh and get some food. And the employees there noticed that I was reading a lot of books, and of course, they came around to kind of clean the tables and do their daily maintenance. And they struck up a conversation with me, wanting to know, what I was doing and, what my plans were and all that kind of stuff, just small talk. And we ended up talking about, well, how often does the Supreme Court justices come and talk to you here? Because, they're just literally right across the hall a little bit and down the way. If I was them, I'd want to get up and go get some food myself and see what's going on in the world, because the Supreme Court is designed to give Supreme Court justices a little isolation from the world, to think about things in a big picture, consider law and order in a great way. And I think it's a wonderful idea. It's wonderful to have a lofty perspective. But as I was there thinking about this and being in their environment and seeing the world the way they see the world, I couldn't help but notice, boy, it'd be real easy to lose touch, because you come into this place, you go to your parking garage, and you don't really have to interact with the rest of the world too much. You come in through the bottom, the basement, and you don't really see anybody. You don't really have to go interact with Congress too much or see the president too much, and you can easily put your black robe on and lose touch with reality, just like anybody who kind of loses sanity a little bit. So the goal is to give them a lofty perspective and a long-term view, and consider laws that are deep on the horizon and their impact on the future, based on constitutional merit. But then you can see how they would lose touch with the common people. Once you're no longer a district judge, like a lot of them come from, you could lose your way intellectually and mentally if you stop talking to people in a day-to-day basis. So as these employees in the cafeteria were explaining to me, they almost never see them. Usually the Supreme Court justices send their aides down to get food and take it back to their offices and eat there, and they don't really get up and walk around too much, which I thought was a shame. I think they should. So I only point this out because as we start analyzing kind of what we're going to have to do in these next 4 years, and the disputes under the Biden administration to pack the courts and put more courts, more than the 9 that they have, and go 12 or 15 or however many they wanted to put on there to have this big group, so they could kind of water down the merits of each one of them. We've got a lot of cases that have been designed around the slow approach to law and order, because the attacks are coming faster than you can process them. So they take advantage of the fact that these people are isolated and kind of put it as a highlight to their work experience, that their job is to make sure Congress doesn't get out of control, make a bunch of bad laws, and that the executive branch doesn't become activists and tyrannical and become like a king. And the problem is, for Trump to fix a lot of the stuff he has to fix, he has to be king-like in order to go fix everything with executive orders. And he has to challenge courts, because courts have been completely leveraged with radical Marxists, and the judicial system itself has been corrupted for over 100 years with those kinds of minds. And the Supreme Court then has to be a final arbiter on it, even though there's a conservative majority. The temptation is to look at things from a lofty perspective, as they do in the Supreme Court. And as I was sitting there looking around and talking to the employees there and asking them how frequently the justices come down and get some food, their answer told me everything I needed to know. Not very often, and that tells you that you have a culture at the Supreme Court that has sort of made itself lose touch with reality, and they base that on an idea of merit, because they're trying to preserve some integrity and not be contaminated by the necessities of the executive branch or the pace of the world in general, or the concerns of a House that is getting elected every couple of years, and then a Senate that's supposed to be around a little bit longer, but still has to go through the cycles of elections. You have a lifetime appointment that you have to figure out your place in it, and it's meant to give you some intellectual distance from those kinds of concerns. You don't have to go out and raise money in your district and do all these things. You can just sit and think about law and order. And you want to think about law and order so much that you don't even get up out of your chair and go down to the cafeteria and get some food. I found the whole experience being at the Supreme Court very educational. I enjoyed it. I love the environment. I love the ambition of it. But I also saw the potential for insanity in it, because if you aren't engaged with the real world, then how can you decide what's best for it? And it'd be real easy to, under the guise of fairness for the long view, to not see that the attack plan from a lot of these radicals that were trying to overtake our country have been using that very sentiment against the judicial review process. And that a lot of these district courts, where you think, I was one of them once, and we have to protect checks on power, so we don't want to have talks about impeaching some of these district judges that are way overstepping their bounds. We don't want to think that judges would be partial. After all, you have a dedication to the bar associations, but we know now that these bar associations have been infused with radical Marxist personalities. They're power climbers trying to make their way in the legal profession, but the foundation of law and order as it has evolved, unchecked, has way too much communism, Marxism, socialism wrapped up in it. And a lot of the judges that have found their way into government employment protect it that way, because they see that as a value, not a detriment. And then when you start getting a bunch of district judges that are appointed by Obama and Biden over the years, and people, even Trump has picked some that were supposed to be conservative and they weren't quite that conservative. Amy Coney Barrett is one of them. She's supposed to be the latest, greatest conservative pointed judge, but she has tendencies where she likes to work with the Democrats, and you can see if you're in an office next to some other they may be radical leftists like we have on the Supreme Court, appointed by Obama over time. That might be the case, and they talk and build friendships, and pretty soon they're voting together because they're not getting out enough and seeing what's going on in the outside world. They get in their car from their house, they drive to their garage at the Supreme Court, they go straight to their offices, they send aides down to get the food at the cafeteria, and they don't really interact too much. And they don't really get a sense of the urgency of what's going on in the outside world, because they have been given a building and a system to distance themselves from it. But you can clearly see that the enemy, as I explained to the workers there, that the attack vector on our country has been to exploit that very trend. The isolation that they have, even though it's supposed to be beneficial, has been turned on its head, and is no longer a benefit for them, it's a hindrance. And what we're end up with is an erosion of our Constitution instead of a preservation of it. So as Trump continues to push and push and push and act like a king and undo all these things that years and years of progressive rule have imposed on us, and he's trying to get rid of them and stop them in their tracks to preserve the country and to turn things back in a healthy direction during his term, the Supreme Court has to understand the context of the times, how the Constitution would and should view such things. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to get up out of your seat and go down to the cafeteria and get some French fries and talk to people who are there. And I did see a few of them, but not enough of them. And according to the employees there, it's a rarity that they do. And I think it should be more common. I think they need, for their own healthy minds, they need to get up and talk to more people more often each day, and don't consider themselves such lofty, heaven-like figures in their nice big black robes and their fancy offices and desks that are designed to put their mind on an elevated plateau. Think even more elevated and consider that the attack against our country was meant to take advantage of the process of judicial review, because the Bar Association embedded itself with left-wing politics disguised behind the merit of checks and balances, and that's a real problem that's embedded itself in our culture in ways that we now have to root out, and you have to root out with speed. And the justices are going to have to consider their role in that and act a lot more quickly than they do presently. Because if they don't, you only have a short window to get everything fixed. And if you don't do that, you won't have a country to even analyze, and you won't have any means to process law and order, because you have these radical Democrats that have been part of that, and they are on the Bar Association, that are trying to undo the system as we speak, using judicial review as their mask and way to put the Trojan horse behind enemy lines. And it certainly is present at the Supreme Court. That's why I was there. That's what I was reading about. And that's what I told all those people who came up to my table and asked me, why do you have all these books out? Because I'm thinking about the origin of the problem and how to fix it. And I wanted to be here to see it for myself. And I have a pretty good understanding now what the situation is and what we have to do about it, which is what we're going to do. Anyway, Supreme Court justices. It's a good idea to get up out of your chair and go to the cafeteria and get your own food. Don't send your aides. And while you're there, talk to the people who are down there a little bit so you know what's going on in the world. It'll help you out as a judge. Wayne Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. I mean, have a good day. Just to let you know how much I like the Supreme Court. My tie clip. I got my tie clip at the Supreme Court. I wear it all the time because I do love the idea of judicial review. And I love the idea of checks on power. But you also have to understand that in order to preserve the right to have those things, you have to have a country that appreciates them. And I do love the Supreme Court. I love it enough to go there and understand it for myself. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.